Hello, hello, and welcome to the Sober Butterfly podcast. I am your host, Nadine Mulvina, and today we are joined with a very special guest. Melissa, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Hi, Nadine. I am doing so well. Thank you for having me on today.
I am so honored to have you on today. And I kind of just want to jump into your story because I know that you have so many gems to share with us. And I want to start with the beginning. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. There's a lot to cover.
There's a lot to cover. Let's get into it. So I know that you mentioned that you were never a moderate drinker. Same. I don't even know what that word means. That your drinking really escalated during the pandemic. So I would love to learn from you. What did drinking look like before versus during that time?
Well, before the pandemic, actually, right before, I was 4 months sober.
Oh,
Yeah, you know, probably about 2017, 2018 was when I really started to get very sober curious and,
okay.
started hearing podcasts about it. That book came out by Ruby.
But like a woman.
Yeah, well, no, actually, Sober Curious by Ruby
Oh,
Warrington.
yes. Oh,
Mhm.
yes, yes. Okay.
And I heard One Year No Beer was an English campaign. Andy Ramage was on the Rich Roll
Mhm.
podcast talking about his new book, the 28-day, remove alcohol experiment. And I thought, this is something that is calling me to
Mm.
try. I had periods where I would see my doctor and my liver enzymes would be slightly elevated, and she would recommend removing alcohol for a few weeks and come back and retest my blood. And I
Mm.
remember the first time she did that, it was, over Labor Day weekend. And I thought, oh my God, not drinking over Labor Day weekend. What does that mean? What does that look like?
Yeah.
Okay. But I did it. And in those 3 weeks, I felt amazing. Like
Wow.
it was a real glimpse of what life could look like and feel like without alcohol. And it was really beautiful and amazing. And I felt so good. I lost some weight. I slept better. I just felt revived. But there was always a part of me that could not imagine it not in my life for the long term. So I would always dip my toe back in and try to moderate my drinking. And in 2019, things were, especially ramped up in the fall of that year. I had my niece's wedding out in Colorado where I just, went for it big time. Almost didn't make the wedding. Honestly, if she would have gotten married at noon, I probably wouldn't have made it because I was a wreck from the night before, and
Yep.
you blame it on the altitude, right?
The altitude.
Ooh,
Mhm.
yeah, it had nothing to do with all those shots from the night before. But in November of 2019, I just had one of those days, one of those nights where I woke up the next day and I was like, I am done. This is enough. I am so sick of my own shit. And I snapped a selfie and I leaned into that program, that 1 year no beer. And
Oh.
yeah, it involved like a daily email and a video and a Facebook group.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. So, there was some accountability.
Community. Yeah.
Y-
Accountability and community, it sounds like.
Yeah, you could lean into it as much as you wanted. You could
Okay.
post as often as you wanted to. And I did. Some people did often and quite a bit. But, I formed relationships on there that I felt held me accountable. But then on March 12th, 2020, in New York, I'm sure you
I was there.
remember,
Mhm.
no one knew what the hell was going on in the city.
End of the world as far as I was concerned.
Right,
Yeah,
right. And
felt
my
like it.
husband and I went out for dinner that night, and it was exactly 4 months to the day. And I said,
Whoa.
I think I want a beer. Like something said to me, like I don't know what's going on. This feels out of control and crazy and weird. And, can I just have a drink to forget about it? And
Yeah, take the edge off.
right.
The world is ending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he did say to me, have a beer. And then the very next thing he said was, do you think you can have just one?
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. He should have opened with that part.
Right.
Have the beer. Like, he should have been like, "Do you think you could just have one?" And then before, but yeah, I get it. No, that's powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know
What
what?
did you say?
That night I did have just one.
Okay, okay.
And then, the few days after that, I probably didn't have any. And
Yeah.
and then, like it does, it just slowly creeps back into your life. And
Mhm.
I started a side hustle in the pandemic because I lost my job. I was working with an elderly woman at the time in her building that was, for residents of, seniors, and they locked down. So she
Yeah.
she got whisked away upstate with her son, which was a good thing. And
Mhm.
so I was out of work. My husband was home. My two teenage children were home.
Mhm.
It was not normal. And I started making cloth face masks, which was
Oh,
a
cool.
cool little side hustle that I had an old sewing machine tucked away, and it kept me really busy and it kept me
Yeah.
feeling creative. But you know what? It also kept me deserving of busting open a bottle of wine at 5 o'clock
Yeah. Yeah.
after sitting at
You
a
worked
sewing
hard.
machine for,
Mhm.
7 hours a day. So, and then we had some real personal loss. I know a lot of people had loss in the pandemic. A lot of it was COVID related, but we lose sight of regular loss during that time
Yeah.
too. My
Yeah.
mother-in-law in July of 21 was diagnosed with cancer. She had a tumor wrapped around her spine, and
Oh,
she
man.
was gone 10 days later.
Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
That's tough. That's very hard.
It
Were you able to see her
No,
before she Oh,
we all had
that's
tickets to
heartbreaking.
go down to see her, and it ended up being her memorial that we were there for. It was it was a huge shock, and she had gone through, it was uterine cancer that she had gone through, like, 6 months prior, and she had
Oh,
clear
wow.
scans, and the last scan she had was maybe 2 months before she had this. So it came out of nowhere, and she just woke up one day and she couldn't move her legs. And she was, 82, 83 years old, and she treatment would have just given her maybe a couple more months and would have left her miserable for the last few months of her life. So she went with her family around her, in the end, her siblings, but it was a big blow to our whole family to lose a matriarch so suddenly. It was
Yeah.
hard. And at that same time, my best friend, my T. Scott, someone who I moved to New York with in 1995. I was a theater professional years ago. That's what brought me to New York originally, and he was as well. And he had struggled with alcohol use, abuse for years and years, and he also was HIV positive. And
Mhm.
it was around the same time that we lost my mother-in-law, where he was telling me that his liver was failing him, his organs were failing him,
Oh my
and he wasn't sure how much time he had left, but that he was going to try to be on a transplant list, and really going to try to live as long as he could. And he wasn't living in New York at the time, he was living in Ohio. So it was hard for me to judge what kind of shape he was in. We spoke on the phone a lot, but he didn't really want me to see how he looked because he
mm.
was embarrassed about how he looked. He was very vain.
Mhm.
He was
Yeah.
yeah, he was a gay theater guy, so you can imagine.
Enough said. Yeah. Appearances matter.
Exactly. So we kept in touch, and in April of 2022, at this point he was going into the hospital regularly to have his, I forget the name of the
Like
procedure.
dialysis?
Yeah, well, not it, to it drained, his
Oh, drained. Okay.
the
Okay.
fluid from his
Oh, I see. Okay.
stomach needed to be
Okay.
drained because
Yeah.
it would
That's
build up. His kidney and liver and kidneys were not filtering out
oh my
anything. So
Was this related, sorry to ask Melissa, but was this related to complications around heavy drinking and or his HIV diagnosis?
it was a combination. It didn't help that they coincided, right?
Okay.
Because the
Okay.
medication he was taking for his HIV needed to be filtered.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
drinking on top of that also needed to be filtered. And
Yeah. Of
and
course.
any kind of food you eat, like it all goes through our organs.
Mhm.
So it just wasn't working. And by the time he found out that this was happening, it was too late.
Mm.
So when people, it's really hard. Like I've turned into a, a bit of a zealot with don't wait too long
Right.
because it can be too late.
Yeah.
Don't wait till you wake up and see that your eyes are yellow or your skin
Mm.
starting to turn yellow because he was a year sober bef-
Was he?
before he
Oh my god.
yeah,
And
before I lost him. He went in April of 22 into the hospital to have this regular procedure, and he was admitted to the emergency room because he had sepsis and pneumonia, and he
oh,
never left the
oh,
hospital. He passed away in the hospital 6 days later, and he was 54 years old.
I'm so sorry. It's young. I'm so sorry to hear about your loss. So, like, you have these two prolific
Yeah,
losses
yeah,
of people that meant so much to you back to back.
yeah.
And how did you cope? How did you deal with that?
Well, I didn't start training for a marathon.
Okay, fair.
you know,
You didn't learn Japanese? That wasn't your go-to?
no, when T was in the hospital, and I even said to myself, I was like, do I go see him? Do I go and see what a person who means so much to me dying of this horrible condition looks like? Do I go and witness this with my own eyes? Will this help get through to me that I need to make major changes in my life?
Mhm.
Because he knew I struggled. He knew that I had stopped drinking those 4 months before the pandemic, and he had asked me about it in the pandemic. I told him no, that I, was kind of back on it again. I wanted to tell him before he passed away that I felt I was drinking too much, and I couldn't tell anyone that
Mm.
I felt like I was drinking too much. So when he was in the hospital, part of me thought, like, will that make it click? And
Yeah,
I couldn't do that to him. I know he wouldn't have appreciated me seeing him in that state. And
yeah.
I don't think that that's like the last picture that I needed to see in my head of him. And so I didn't. And when he passed, it was a huge blow, and it didn't kick me into any kind of let's get sober right now action. In fact, it just pushed me into let's do everything that he couldn't do because he's dead now and you're not. So let's live it up. Let's drink whatever you want. Let's eat whatever you want.
Mhm.
Let's do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I did for the next 15 and a half months.
Mm.
And by the summer of 23, I did not like the way I looked. I would see myself in pictures and I hated the image looking back at me. What was even worse than the image was the thought in my head of that maybe this was just the way my life was supposed to be.
Oh, man. That's hard. That's
That maybe I was meant to live a mediocre life, being heavier. A lot of people do, right? A lot of people walk
Mhm.
around with a smile on their face, and we don't know what they're carrying inside. And
Absolutely.
maybe that was supposed to be me, and that was scarier than the actual image. And when I started waking up in the summer of 23, feeling like, wondering if, what would happen if I didn't get out of bed that day. I knew that it was definitely time to start addressing what was going on. And I knew exactly why I was feeling that way. I knew that alcohol is a depressant. I've never felt that way before. Never. I've had my mom, I've had close friends deal with depression a lot. And I've always been the kind of, come on, what's your problem? Snap out of
Rally.
it. Never got it. Never got it. And I was like, holy shit, this must be it. This has got to be it. I couldn't believe it. And so when I made an appointment with my doctor in mid-August, I had to see her. I had to have a medication refilled. I couldn't telehealth her anymore. Doctors were like, sorry, you got to come in and see me now.
Yeah.
You can only get away with that stuff for early in the pandemic. And I went and saw her, and she had, she remembered my stuff. She remembered that group I was with and the liver enzymes that had creeped up, and I don't know what it was about my doctor, but I could tell her. I could tell her that I thought I was drinking too much. And she is the kind of doctor that really heard me. She didn't judge me.
That's important.
She didn't condemn me. She didn't blow it off. She didn't undermine it. She really heard me. She talked about different options, AA, naltrexone. I'd never even heard of naltrexone.
And naltrexone, for folks who may be unaware, is that a medication used to help people scale back with their drinking?
Yeah. Exactly. It's used to curb your cravings for alcohol. I had gone in there knowing that semaglutides, which are now very much in the news for curbing those cravings, but 18 months ago, they weren't as much. But I had heard something, and so I brought that up to her, and she said, yeah, that's true, but it's also a diabetes medication, and you wouldn't be able to get it because you're not diabetic. Anyway, she said, let's take your blood work and see what happens. And I knew I was heavy already because I could see that on the scale. I knew my blood pressure was really through the roof. So when I got the blood work back the next day, I remember exactly where I was in the park, ready to go in. I had resumed working with my senior lady downtown at her residence. My blood panel was just horrific. It was really shocking. I wasn't really shocked by it, though, because I knew exactly what I was doing to my body.
Right.
My liver enzymes were through the roof. And you know what? I like to say this number out loud because it keeps me accountable. Those two numbers, there's an AST and an ALT, and they run between 5 and 40, I think, are the normal range. One of those numbers with me was 195.
Whoa.
Wait, it gets better.
That's my actual reaction. Like, whoa, okay.
Well, the other one was 311.
And so when your doctor saw that, what was her response?
Her response was in an email, these are the highest liver enzymes you've ever had.
Okay.
And
so basically, whoa, like what I just said. Okay.
My cholesterol was also the highest it's ever been. Like I said, my weight, my A1C, my glucose. I was pre-diabetic. I had been for 9 years. That's what I went in to get my prescription refilled for. I was veering on the diabetic range. I was at a 6.6. Diabetic is 7.0. And she said, you need to make drastic behavioral changes. I swear I'm going to get this tattooed on my arm one day. You need to change your diet, right? Refined carbs need to get scaled way back. You need to move your body more. Try to stop drinking. Drastic behavioral changes. I want to see you again no less than 3 months. So I made an appointment, 11 weeks. I gave myself 11 weeks. And I said to myself, Nadine, I was like, I'm not going to be another American statistic of being put on a statin, being put on a blood pressure medication, being diabetic at age 51 years old. I was like, fuck this.
Yeah.
I said, I am not a moderate drinker. I never have been. I'm never going to be.
Yeah.
I swear to God, I if you believe in Jesus or whoever, I gave it up right then and there.
Wow. That's powerful. It sounds like you were kind of scared straight and felt motivated. And I kind of want to backtrack a bit to the depression piece, because depression really, once it sinks its claws into you, like, you want to talk about control over how you feel, your emotions, your state of mind, your physical, like sometimes viscerally in your body, not being able to get up. And it sounds like a big part of it that was driving that depression and that period of that fuck it moment. We've all been there, right? Where we're just like, fuck it, I'm just going to do what I want because life is short. But it sounds like a big part of that was grief, and you grieving extensively for your friend and for your mother-in-law. And yeah, I think you just get to that place of despair where it's like, well, what's the point? But fast forward, I think to your point, like, you knew that the numbers were going to be high. You knew that a change had to happen, but sometimes it's super motivating to have, like, I don't know how you feel, but me personally, Melissa, I'm like, give me a project. Like, I need a will. I need a will to, like, go on sometimes. I need something to pour into. If someone doubts me or someone tells me I can't do something, that fuels me sometimes, especially if you're in a low place, like, you need a reason or you need something to project into the future that you can work towards. Even if it's not like the true healing that needs to get done, like, you're not there yet, like, it gives you something, like a goal to work towards.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, I could be wrong, but it sounds like what I'm hearing from your story or parts of your story right now.
100 million %. Yes.
Yeah.
I was like,
relatable.
Let's fucking go. I
Yeah.
really was. And I put the pedal to the metal, and I started walking. I started going to my bougie gym that I belong to, where,
Equinox?
yep,
Yeah.
you know it.
Yep.
You know, I pay for this gym that I would go to like 3 times a month to take a dance class, and tell myself this limiting belief that I'm too old to work out and not have fun when I do it. Like,
No, you need to go. You need to get your eucalyptus towels.
Right.
Like,
Right.
take advantage of those amenities.
Yeah. But I got moving. I came home and I changed my diet. I moved out a lot of dairy, refined carbs, all that bullshit went. I just ate more vegetables and proteins, and just the simple act of moving my body. I walked every day. I was up with the sun walking. I mean, there was a time in Riverside Park. I live right on Riverside Drive up in Harlem.
Yeah.
And in the summer of 23, I took a walk, tried to, I walked down to about 96th Street, and I was so gassed when I was coming home that I took a bus home. And
Yeah, we've been there. We've all been there.
and I think about that all the time when I'm like, you're never going to see me taking a bus home again.
Mostly when it's cold. I'm like, okay, forget that. But yeah.
Well, I was doing it because I was gassed.
Tired. Yeah, gassed. Yeah, I got you.
So I really I got busy, and I noticed change immediately within 3 weeks. I was losing weight, I think at 6 weeks, I remember it was my birthday 6 weeks into it, and I thought, okay, and I visited friends down in Florida. I knew he had a bottle of my favorite wine in the fridge out in the garage. I never once went out in that garage and opened up that refrigerator.
I love that.
I had to move my daughter into college. It was not an easy, stressful things pop up.
Yeah.
I stayed focused. I planned for the future. I looked forward to some things. I put some things on the calendar. I went back and saw that doctor 11 weeks to the day. And she honestly thought I was getting Ozempic on the black market when she saw me.
Sorry.
It's a true story.
Oh my gosh.
She
She's like, "Who is your connect? I will not report. Just tell me the truth." Oh, that's so funny.
No, for
Yeah.
real. And I couldn't wait to give her my blood. I was like, "Here, open my
Here.
veins, take it."
Wow.
Liver enzymes were all back to normal. Those
Whoa.
super high liver enzymes. 11 weeks, no alcohol, switching out your diet, moving your body back to normal. My cholesterol dropped 50 points,
Whoa.
50 points. My
Wow.
my blood pressure was down. My A1C, I was at a 6.6, it came down to 5.5. It was below pre-diabetic.
Crazy.
I
What?
lost 27 pounds.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And this was all healthy. You weren't over
I
restricting. You
was
were just
not over
moving your body.
restricting
You stopped
anything.
drinking. Okay.
Nope.
That's insane in the best way possible.
And
Whoa.
I felt so good. And I walked out of there and I was like, there was no part of me that wanted to pick up a bottle of wine and celebrate that night. I just wanted to keep going. I wanted to keep learning about myself. I wanted to keep exploring sobriety. I wanted to find community. I wanted to just see where if this was going to be my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
This was going to be my life.
That's incredible. And at this time, because you mentioned that, going into that appointment prior to the 11-week transformation, you disclosed to your doctor, like, I think I have a problem with alcohol. And he or she gave you great resources. You also confided in your friend who passed away that, you also felt like you had a problem. Kind of backtracking a little bit here, but in the pandemic, you also mentioned both your kids were home, your husband home, close quarters. I'm imagining New York, like, everyone's home essentially. So did anyone pick up on, oh, I think mom/Melissa, she's drinking quite a bit, or was it something that you were hiding or able to give off this level of control with those closest to you?
Yeah, the last answer.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
one ever, I
Suspected.
would have loved people to sit me down. I swear.
Oh my gosh.
It would never
Really?
yeah. And it never happened. And actually, I have my own podcast and I interviewed my husband. He was my first guest
Oh my god, I have to listen to that. Okay,
because I
cool.
wanted to ask him questions
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah.
Like, were you close to talking to me? Was that
What did
ever
he say?
going to happen? And he said he was close to it.
Oh, okay.
But I've got a husband that like lets me have time to figure my things out. He
Yeah.
doesn't want to, it's a fine line between pushing and pulling.
Mhm.
There are women like us that
Mhm.
have their shit together,
Yeah.
right? To a fault sometimes,
Yeah. Yeah, to a fault, at our own detriment,
right?
sometimes.
And
Well-being.
it, I mean, it's a really good thing, but and I think it's harder in that circumstance to then ask for help
Mhm.
because
So
then we
true.
come off looking weaker than we
Yeah.
appear.
Or needy. I'm not married, but I've been in relationships, and I get afraid of feeling like I need someone to help me. Like I'm very self-reliant. I'm very independent. I've always been that way. And so of course, like I connect with people, but I like to feel like I have a level of control. And I don't know if that's healthy, but like I relate to that. Yeah. So he was close to, but he didn't. That's interesting. And was a part of that like a byproduct of just the times? Like, because everyone in the pandemic, it felt like,
For sure.
was drinking copious amounts, right? It wasn't weird. Like, it's like, oh, yeah, like
No.
this is a rite of passage. This is unprecedented. Like all the things, right?
Yeah, I think it was very normal, and we're figuring that out right now. Like women,
Mm.
especially. I mean, you're younger than I am, but women my age, 40s and 50s, are coming to terms with the fact that the pandemic was super rough for them.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
coffee cup that was full of coffee, kept getting, change, the coffee kept changing, wine was going in the coffee earlier and
Yeah, the
earlier in
Yeti
the
mug.
day.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be on I don't wanna expose myself too much, but let's just say I was not waiting until 5 PM to start drinking in the pandemic, you
Right,
know?
right.
Only because I'm a public servant and I wanna keep my job. But anyway, yeah, I very much relate to that. Like, yeah, it was also, like, maybe celebrated is a strong word, but it was very much like on social media, I would constantly see funny content, which that's the thing about humor. I love humor, but, like, oftentimes you can, you know, sway people, disarm them, convince them, manipulate people through humor. And so I would relate heavily to, like, different drinking accounts and sober or not sober, very opposite influencers who were not sober, who were promoting this idea that, like, these are dark times and we have to do what we have to do to get through them, and it's okay, like, to drink out of a Yeti mug, to your point, wine at 9 a.m. And that's toxic.
It
Yeah,
it
it's
is.
just
It
toxic.
is. And in New York, and all of a sudden restaurants were delivering wine with your takeout. You could walk up to a takeout and get people were drinking on the street like it was Mardi Gras, you
I
know?
wasn't actually in the pandemic for the beginning or New York for the beginning of the pandemic, so going back to that March 20th, once school shut down, I was like, "Oh, I'm out of here."
Right.
Like, that is I know what's about to go down, like, schools are out of session for an undisclosed amount of time, so I went to Florida where my family lives, and
Okay.
you can only imagine. I'm talking Miami here, like, in the pandemic. What pandemic? That's how it felt. So,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
liquor stores were open. That was considered an essential place of business or whatever they were called. Like, I was drinking. I was drinking in the pandemic.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it's crazy to think that that was our normal. That was our everyday.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, to add, like, to the other stresses of life and not being able to say goodbye to people who have passed, whether it was related to COVID or not,
Yeah.
it impacts us on such a deep level beyond just, like, the grieving and the loss, like, our psyche. It's like, "I'm not okay. How do I get through this?" But it sounds like you were able to do some deep healing, and it sounds like you had to have that major wake-up call, those high numbers from your doctor to hear that, to motivate you. So I'm just so happy that you got there, Melissa. And I'm sure you didn't stop after the 11 weeks. It sounds like you were motivated to keep going.
Yeah. I've maintained, I've maintained. I've gained a little weight back, but when your face changes so much when if you're
Yeah.
used to like a bloated red face,
Yeah.
um it's just amazing. Like, even people that remove alcohol, even if they don't lose weight, their face changes
Yes, that
because
part.
the inflammation goes down almost instantly. And
Yeah.
seeing pictures, old pictures, and believe me, I keep those pictures. I have an album on my phone, old drunk pics. And I
Mhm.
keep those pictures. I want those pictures. I want to keep reminders of those because I don't ever want to go back to those, let me tell you.
I don't ever want to go back. And I like that you brought up the point because I was pretty much the same size when I was drinking, and actually when I got sober, it was triggering for me in the beginning because I was craving so much sugar.
Mhm.
Because as you probably know, like, when you drink in excess the way I did, your body metabolizes the alcohol and it converts into sugar. So when I stopped drinking, I was like, why do I have all of these cravings for sugar? And so I started to overdo it and eat junk food, and the weight gain was actually, like, very triggering for me as somebody
Mhm.
who has struggled with body dysmorphia and, like, disordered eating, and it almost pushed me back to drinking because I was like, I could maintain my weight when I was drinking, like, as bad as it was, like, that cycle I was in, like, I knew how to maintain my weight and I didn't like losing that control. But obviously, I recognize with time, everything has evened out. I've learned to manage, like, you can't have 5 donuts. Like, that's okay. You can't eat a whole pint of ice cream every day. Like, I've scaled back and adjusted. But to your earlier point, like, the face, like, yes, like, I'm not inflamed. I'm not puffy. I had really, like, this is a humble brag, but, like, my whole life I had amazing skin up until around 30.
Mm.
And when I hit 30, I just experienced the worst breakouts and I could not figure out what was happening. I was so vain too. Like I was just like, my pride is in my skin, even though I didn't take care of it. It didn't deserve nice skin. I would drink and pass out and have makeup on and the whole gambit. But long story short, that was something that I experienced as a positive effect of quitting drinking. My skin cleared up as well. Like I was no longer ingesting poison, right?
Yep.
So that was something that like, because I could not figure it out. I was like, I've changed nothing in my life. I'm doing the same thing. And all of a sudden I'm having like adult acne. What is that about? But maybe my body was just tired, Melissa. It
Maybe.
was just like, look, girl, like you can't keep this up. Like something has got to give. So thank you for sharing all of that. It's a good reminder. Yes, that like your whole everything transforms when you quit drinking.
Yeah.
So Melissa, you were talking to us about what life looked like before sobriety in the midst of the pandemic, and you quit drinking alcohol in August of 2023.
Yes.
Since then, it sounds like everything has changed. So I would love to hear what have been some of the most positive aspects in your life since going alcohol free.
Oh, how much time you got, Nadine?
We have time, Melissa, get into it. And I know as well that you're an alcohol-free coach, so I would also like to hear that evolution, like how you became a coach. So in any form, how has sobriety changed your life, Melissa?
Well, yeah, the coaching has been amazing, and that was something I was thinking about in my first stint, actually. I remember hearing about it through This Naked Mind, and I actually, like,
Mm,
interviewed with someone over there, and that was right before the pandemic, but I wasn't so comfortable with my sobriety at that point.
mhm.
I wasn't ready to pull the trigger yet with the investment. This time around, though, I thought about it almost immediately. I was always the kind of person, the kind of friend that people call when they are going through something. I've just always been that kind of person.
That's a good trait. You're a good listener.
Yep.
Good advice.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
And, I've always been this mother figure, this caretaker, which, and sometimes is like, okay, enough already. Like, sometimes it's nice to be taken care
Right,
of
I was
as
like, mama
well.
needs some love too. Yep.
Right. But I knew that it's something I would be good at. I know that I can listen and I can help and I can guide. And so about, like 7 months into it, my sobriety, I started a certification process with a program called Euphoric AF with Carolina Jakalowska. And it was a 10-month process with 5 different modalities and then a business training on top of it. And I've been coaching now for about 6 months, and I currently have a roster of 6 badass women that I'm working with. And, when they hit those 30 days, 60 days, 90
Yeah.
days, like there's nothing more satisfying than to see them accomplish that, to see them bust through those limiting beliefs that they come to me with on day one,
Mhm.
saying, am I going to have fun without drinking?
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
remember being there. I remember having those. I never said them out loud. I wouldn't have
Yeah.
thought about saying them to anyone. I've said them in my head over and over. So that is a huge part of my life. As far as other things, I just think the clarity, the connection, the peace of
Mhm.
mind
Yeah.
that you have with other people, the patience. I mean, you live in New York, like
I'm not a patient person by default. I'm not gonna lie to you, but I find that I have a lot more, I'll say, grace to give.
right.
I've given myself grace. I can give other people grace,
Yeah.
but yes, living in New York and it can be very stress inducing. I'll say
It can be hard. It can be tough, but don't
yes.
you find that you can more easily step back and wonder what's going on in that person's life that's,
Okay, yes,
you know?
yes, that part. I thought you were gonna say something like when you said patience, I was thinking like slow walker in front of me. Like I am like I'm gonna talk about rile me up, Melissa. Slow walker.
Uh,
Especially if you cut me off. when I'm walking. Okay, we're on the same page. Yes, I
I'm
do.
talking more I'm talking more like the people that have real like anger issues in New
Yes,
York,
yes,
right?
yes,
Like
yes.
people that stop dead in their tracks right in front of me when you're walking full speed. Yeah, I no, that's hard to overcome.
Okay, I get what you mean. Yes. Yeah, I think in general, like back to the clarity piece that you mentioned, like I have so much more clarity in all aspects of my life. But I noticed that before, like I used to say I was an observant person, but like I actually don't think I was very self-aware or aware of others so much. And in New York, you kind of have blinders on. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, you're aware of potential risks and threats and danger, but like for the most part, you're like tunnel vision. Like, where am I going? Get out my way. Now I find that I have a lot more like sense of awareness just around like what's going on around me. So if I'm on the subway, like I'm looking at people, and I think when you had mentioned like thinking about what someone else may be going through, because on the outside you can never really tell, like that is something that I do a lot of. Like I literally people watch, not in a creepy way, but I'm like I pick up on social cues. I like,
Mhm.
I smile at people. I don't say
Mhm.
hello because I'm still a New Yorker, but like unless they speak to me. But like I think sometimes that can scare people if you're just like, hello, 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 how are you? But like I definitely I definitely give people eye contact. I think I'm seeing people as human, right? And when you said before, if someone's angry or they're yelling, like I'm not gonna lie to you or to anyone listening, like I'm not gonna engage with that person and be like, what's wrong? How can I help? But
No.
I pay attention and I'm like, I wonder what is going on in this person's life or what they're thinking or what they're going through that would incite such a reaction,
Right.
right? And I don't know if I can help, but it's just like this idea of like I'm aware I see you as a human. Like I'm not
Right.
just like going through the motions. I'm in the matrix, like get out my way. Like I really do see people and engage with people, I feel like more often than I did before.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with all of that. And just, I mean, in New York, like I used to be in such a hurry to get home and sit in my couch and
Oh, and
drink my
drink.
wine
Yeah, wine, of course.
and
Yeah, here.
just not leave my right, have any
Yeah,
excuse to not leave my apartment.
yeah,
And I find myself getting out of my comfort zone more often,
yeah, yeah,
which
yeah,
as you age is a thing that is really can be really challenging.
yeah,
So sobriety has offered me that, and I feel like my motto is if it scares me, it means I should do it
ooh, yeah, yeah,
because I'm going to learn something from it. It
yeah,
doesn't have to go it doesn't have to go well, and a lot of times it won't.
yeah,
I'm always going to learn something from it, and why not take a risk? What do you have to lose, right? We're already growing and learning just by being sober in a world that's obsessed with alcohol,
yeah,
right?
truly.
So just I feel like I'm taking more risk. I'm putting myself out there more. I'm just trying to embrace growth. And I don't think I would be doing that if I was still sitting on my couch drinking and doom scrolling and watching TV.
Living vicariously through others, and I'm right there with you. And what a great full circle moment, Melissa, because like when you had that low point where you were grieving and you were in the throes of your drinking, you were kind of like, yeah, like what's the point? Like what am I doing this for? What is the purpose of this? I'm going to do what I want. And look at this full circle moment, like the progress. Right now it's like, yeah, like what do I have to lose? But in the best way possible. You're like, I have nothing to lose. Outside of my comfort zone exists growth. And
Right.
that's where I want to tap into. So like I just love that because what do I have to lose can go very different ways. Like, what do I have to lose? I don't give a fuck. It can easily just be like, I'm going to do whatever because what is the point of it, all of this versus what do I have to lose? Like, I want to push myself because I want to grow and I want to optimize my life and I want to see what variations of self I can tap into. And I'm not afraid to fail. I don't have to be perfect to everything because there's a lesson somewhere along the way.
Yeah, why not?
Why not? I love that. Okay, so as we kind of wrap up here, can we play a little game?
Sure. I love games.
Okay, I'm experimenting with my game. So this one's just for you, Melissa.
Great.
Let's play mom, coach, or chaos. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, I made this up, so it's okay if it doesn't go well. We won't do it again if it doesn't work, Melissa. You are my guinea pig for this one. Okay. So, mom, coach, or chaos. I'm gonna give you a scenario, and you have to tell me if you handle it like a mom. So tapping into that like nurturing, practical side of you. A coach, thinking you're alcohol-free coaching, like motivational tough love approach, or pure chaos, aka maybe like your pre-sober self. Okay.
okay.
Ready? So mom, coach, or chaos.
Okay.
So this is your first scenario. Someone hands you a glass of champagne at a wedding and says, just one won't hurt. Are you handling it like a mom, a coach, or going for chaos?
I would say a coach.
Mm.
You want a response?
Yeah, give me a response. I'm like, Melissa, oh my God, I have this bottle of Dom Perignon for you, or glass. That's toast. One won't hurt.
Well, if it's a party and it's Dom Perrier, chances are I'm dressed up and looking very snatched for my 53-year-old self, if I
Yes.
do say so.
Yes, you
And I would say, oh, no, thank you. I'm a non drinker. That's why I look so good.
do. Ooh, snap to that. I love that. I live for like quips, like quick, like little comeback lines for people who are trying to pressure you to drink. And that's a good one because it's not rude to the other person. It's like you're owning it. You're like, yeah, like why would I ever want to? Like, you think I can look like this if I were drinking? No. I
Yep.
love that. I love that. That's a good one. Okay.
You could use
Uh,
that.
what'd you say?
You could use that
I can
all,
use that. Yeah, like
all
as
the
if I
time.
would look like this. Come on, let's get real. Okay. So this next situation, going with mom, coach, or chaos, you're out with friends, the drinks are flowing, and someone drunkenly, well, you're not drinking, but you're out with friends, drinks are flowing, and someone drunkenly confesses a wild secret to you. How are you handling that? Are you giving them the practical nurturing response as mom, motivational tough love as coach, or pure chaos pre sober self?
I would say mom.
Yeah. Would you
Yeah.
approach it in the moment because they're drunk, or would you like wait till the next day, or both?
I would probably approach it in the moment and say, come on, come here for 2 seconds. I know you're a little drunk right now, but I got to tell you, we can't do this right here. You
Mm,
need to, this can't happen right here. You're probably not going to remember this. I just need you to know we can't talk about this right here.
yeah, we can't tell
I'm going
all
to,
the strangers that you're having an affair with your
right,
physical therapist. Like, we're not doing that
right.
here. Okay.
I'm gonna text you right now. You don't know me. I'm gonna send you a text. You're gonna read it in the morning. You're gonna
Yeah.
wonder who the hell this is. Just trust me, it's a mom looking out for you.
I love that. Okay, that's a good one. This last one is someone comes up to you, the someone doesn't matter, but let's just say that they felt the need to confide in you. I think I have a drinking problem, but I don't want to quit completely. How would you respond? What hat are you wearing, mom, coach, or chaos?
Oh God, I'm sorry, I can't give you a chaos answer. I feel like
I
I
know,
have
I
it.
feel like none of these really aid to
I mean,
chaos.
I feel like maybe the last one could have been chaos, but I haven't been in a chaos mind in so long.
Yeah, where you're just like, yeah, tell all your secrets. Tell the whole group everything about you, every dirty little secret. No,
No,
that's what you would do to an enemy, not a friend. Okay.
no, that last one. So they come up to me and say they want to quit
I
drinking,
think
but
I have,
they
yeah, well, they're saying no. They're saying I think I have a problem, but I don't want to quit.
right. Oh, that's all coach. Yeah, that would
Yeah.
be yeah, tell me what your greatest fear is around quitting. That's
Mhm.
all limiting beliefs. Yeah,
Yeah.
what's holding you
Yeah.
back? What
Yeah.
what do you think is the worst thing that would happen if you
Yeah.
quit? What kind of walls would come tumbling down? Yeah, it's just that's where you ask just a barrage of questions of, you know, what then, what now, how, this and that. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
coach. That's
I love
often how a first coaching session
those.
looks
Oh,
like.
this is real
It
life.
it can look like, yeah,
Yeah.
like what brings you here? Why now? What, what do you want to, yeah, that's all, coach.
I love that. I tell people, because you are a sober coach, like, maybe you can give me feedback, and I'm not a coach and like I don't pretend to be, but if people ask me like, oh, like what do you think I should do, or like how can I approach this if I'm thinking about quitting and I can't, or whatever, I often tell people to treat it like a social experiment, in the sense that they don't have to commit to anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can take it day by day, take
Mm-hmm.
inventory, collect the data,
Mm-hmm.
and then discern whether or not you want to continue on this path, or you can always go back to where you are now. Is
Yep.
that good advice?
That's great advice. Get curious about it.
Yeah, the more you know, the more you know.
Exactly. And
Yeah,
is it adding to your life?
yeah,
Is it adding to your life, or is it not suiting your life anymore? Are there
yeah.
too many things that it's destructive, and you know what I mean? And how's it making you feel at the end of the day?
And I think oftentimes we have an inner knowing. Anytime someone thinks like, do I have a problem? Chances are it doesn't need to be defined, right? But
Right.
if you're asking that question,
It's
if you're
like,
here,
yeah,
if you're asking me, like, even if you're getting curious, to your point, like you're looking at sober accounts, like, oh, what
right.
could life look like? There's something that
Right.
maybe alcohol is playing, or the substance is playing too large a role in your life, and you need to change that.
Right. It's like when you're playing a game, like a board game. If you have to ask yourself, am I cheating? You're
Oh,
probably cheating.
that's so good.
Okay.
Oh, that's a good
If you have
one.
to ask yourself, do I have a problem? You probably have a problem.
Yeah, I love that board game analogy because I'm so competitive. So
You
oftentimes I'm like,
know.
I will win at all. Like, so like I've been the person like, it doesn't feel as good to cheat and win. Is this
No.
cheating? And then people ask, then yeah, you're
Yeah.
not being honest. And same with sobriety, or drinking, if you have to ask, you're not being fully honest with yourself. Like, yeah, there's something
Yeah.
amiss. There's something going on there.
It's like moderation. If you are drawing boundaries around your drinking, then you probably have a problem with your drinking. Normal
You mean people
people,
don't have to do that?
no.
People can
Normal,
just be like, oh, this is
exactly.
great.
Normal
Oh,
people don't. Some people, a lot of people just go out and have a drink and they don't
oh,
think
that's
about
different
it.
than me.
Not me.
That's how you know. That's how
Not,
I know.
not
I'm
me, girl.
not from my first, like, I've never been like, yeah, this is great. One is good.
Nope. Not me
I've done
either.
just one because I've tried to prove to myself that I don't have a problem. But
Right. Right.
who are you fooling? Anyway, Melissa, this has been so insightful, so enlightening. I've laughed. I've gotten chills from hearing parts of your story. I feel like you just have so much wealth in terms of knowledge, and I don't know if you believe in spirituality or whatnot, but like I can feel your energy from over here. And like when you were speaking about the losses that you experienced, and when you were speaking about like just that place of hopelessness, because I've definitely been there. I've definitely
Yeah.
been depressed to the extent of like, what is the purpose of all of this if this is how I feel? And it's hard to see past that. But then you get to the other side, like it is so beautiful. And
Yeah.
I would love to just kind of wind down with this final question for you. If you could give any advice to your younger self could be yesterday. It can be Melissa back in 2020 at the start of the pandemic. It can be Melissa at any point in your life. But if you could look back and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be and why?
I think I would say it's going to happen. You're going to
Mm,
figure it out. Because I always have, Nadine, I always have thought that at some point I would remove alcohol from my life, that I
mhm.
knew that deep down it would not be sustainable for me, whether it was forced or I would want to, or a combination. I
Yeah.
really do feel like deep down that at some point I was going to live a life without it. And I guess I would say that it is going to happen and it's going to be okay. And actually, it's going to be better than okay. It's going to be really beautiful.
That was actually one of my favorite answers. I got chills. Like I realized in this moment, like it's funny because you tend to have these like unconscious or subconscious knowings or inner knowings, but when someone says it, if it hasn't come to your conscious mind yet, like it just something inside of you lights up, and that's what happened to me just now. Because I think, to be honest with you, I always knew from the first time I ever tried alcohol at age 13 and blacked out
Hmm.
that it was not it. if I wanted to live, if I wanted to survive, and of course I wasn't thinking that long term at that young age, but, like, I always knew that, like, it was gonna be me or the alcohol. Like, I knew that, like, it was not sustainable to
Right.
live the life I was living, and I'm so grateful that I chose I chose this life, this path, because I always knew alcohol was a problem for me. It's just
Same.
insane to, like, how much we live in denial, or we try to protect ourselves or protect our precious coping mechanism. For me, it was, and just all of the things, but I always knew. I always freaking knew. That's the crazy part. Like, we always know what we need,
Yeah.
whether we wanna deal with it or not.
Yeah.
So, thank you for sharing that. Like, I needed to hear that today.
Yeah.
Um, Good reminder, or just awakening for me, because I that was something that was dormant that I now realize holds true for me as
Yeah.
well.
You're welcome.
Thank you for coming on the show, Melissa, and
Oh,
where can people connect with you? Can you let us know, and I will plug everything in the show notes.
absolutely. You can find me on Instagram at The Sober New Yorker. And that's also the name of my podcast, The Sober New Yorker, and my website, The Sober New Yorker, if anyone is interested in connecting with me there or hearing more about my coaching or signing up for my newsletter. That's the place to do it. And thank you, Nadine. This has been absolutely incredible. I love to sit down with people. It's been a while since I've chatted about my story. So I really appreciate you giving me the time and the space.
And I feel very grateful to have heard your story and been able to share it with my audience as well. So, guys, make sure you check out The Sober New Yorker. Everything is plugged below in the show notes. And if you ever want someone to come on the show, I'm here. I'm in New York. I'm happy to chat.
I would
And
love that.
I'm an open book. So, whatever you want to talk about, I'm here.
Excellent.
All right. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Nadine.